Hi, automotive enthusiasts. Welcome to Overdrive Insider, where today we're setting our sights on one of the most unforgettable machines of mid-century America, the Harley-Davidson Panhead of the 1950s. This isn't just a motorcycle we're talking about. It's a rolling piece of living history, a chrome-laden time capsule that still has the power to turn heads more than 70 years after it first roared onto the open road. When the Panhead debuted in 1948, it instantly became the symbol of post-war optimism and restless freedom. And by the 1950s, it was no longer just transportation. It was style. It was rebellion. It was individuality cast in steel. For decades, riders, collectors, and dreamers alike have looked at the Panhead as more than just a machine. They've seen it as a statement about who they are and where they're going. And that's the story we'll unfold today. Not just how it worked, but why it mattered, how it evolved, and why it refuses to fade into the background even as the motorcycle world has changed beyond recognition. We'll begin by setting the scene in post-war America, a country that had just come through victory and sacrifice, a nation bursting with energy and ready to put its young men and women back on the road. The Panhead didn't appear in a vacuum. It came at exactly the right moment, when motorcycling itself was becoming part of popular culture, when movies, music, and media were planting the idea that freedom could be found on two wheels. In those early years of the 1950s, the Panhead defined the look of Harley-Davidson, big, brash, confident, and dripping with chrome. While under the surface, it delivered the smoothest and most reliable ride Harley had offered to date. That's why this story is as much about the people who rode these bikes as it is about the engineering that made them possible. Over the course of this video, we'll dive into three interconnected layers of the Panhead legacy. First, we'll explore how its arrival in the post-war years set a new standard for both performance and presence, and how it gave everyday Americans a taste of a lifestyle they had only imagined. Then we'll push deeper into the cultural wave it helped spark, from outlaw clubs and Hollywood imagery to the custom chopper movement that grew up in its shadow. Finally, we'll reflect on its lasting impact, its value as a collector's treasure, and why the Panhead remains a touchstone in motorcycle history long after the last one left the factory in the mid-1960s. Whether you're a lifelong rider or someone who just appreciates the artistry of classic machines, today's ride promises to connect you with the sound, the feel, and the enduring myth of the Harley-Davidson Panhead. So settle in, automotive enthusiasts. This is going to be a journey through style, culture, and mechanical ingenuity, all anchored by a machine that still commands respect wherever it goes. The years following World War II created a unique stage for the Harley-Davidson Panhead to shine. Americans were eager for symbols of mobility, optimism, and individuality, and the Panhead delivered all three with confidence. Its gleaming aluminum rocker covers, shaped like inverted pans, became instantly recognizable, and they weren't just for show. They improved lubrication, reduced leaks, and offered smoother performance than the knucklehead it replaced. In neighborhoods across the country, returning veterans were drawn to the sense of freedom motorcycles promised, and the Panhead gave them a machine that matched their ambitions. It was not only an upgrade in function, but also an invitation to participate in a growing culture of the open road, a shift that would change both Harley-Davidson and American society itself. Micro-story. Imagine a young veteran in 1952 freshly back from service with some savings in his pocket and a hunger for the open highway. He walks into a Harley dealership and sees the Panhead gleaming beneath the showroom lights. It's more than a purchase. It's a doorway to an entirely new identity, one that promises not just transportation but self-expression. That veteran rolls away not just with a bike but with a new way of being, and soon, his Panhead becomes the centerpiece of neighborhood admiration and weekend road trips, planting the seed for a lifelong passion. Context digest. In mechanical terms, the Panhead represented progress. Its overhead valve design offered a leap forward in efficiency compared to earlier Harley engines, while its improved oil circulation solved problems that had plagued riders for years. Riders appreciated not having to fight with constant leaks, and this reliability allowed Harley to position the Panhead as both rugged and stylish, capable of serving commuting needs and long-distance cruising alike. It was versatility wrapped in visual drama. Microstory. Picture the rural rider who lived miles from the nearest town. For him, the Panhead wasn't a luxury. It was lifeline and leisure all at once. He could load it up with supplies, ride into town with confidence, and still show off a machine that looked sharp on Main Street Saturday nights. The Panhead was equally at home hauling necessities as it was turning heads at the local diner. This dual identity, practical tool and cultural icon, gave it an unmatched staying power in the 1950s landscape. Reflection bridge. The Panhead wasn't just about getting from point A to point B. It carried with it a promise of belonging to something larger than oneself. And that promise attracted not only everyday riders, but also entire communities who would soon build clubs and lifestyles around the machine. Microstory. In Southern California, groups of friends in the mid-1950s began meeting up for weekend rides. They weren't organized clubs at first, just young people who loved the way the Panhead carried them across desert highways and coastal roads. But as the rides grew bigger, the camaraderie deepened, and soon the Panhead became the unofficial badge of belonging. Photos from that era show riders lined up outside roadside diners, chrome tanks catching the sun, each bike a reflection of its owner's pride. Context digest. Harley-Davidson marketing capitalized on this growing sense of community. Advertisements from the period depicted riders as adventurous, self-assured, and stylish, tapping into the cultural narrative that motorcycles weren't fringe but aspirational. The Panhead became a bridge between Harley's heritage and America's dreams of freedom. This was not just a tool for transport, but a lifestyle accessory, a message reinforced in movies and magazines that made the bike part of popular imagination. Microstory. In a small Midwestern town, a high schooler remembers watching older riders thunder past on Panheads, their exhaust echoing off brick buildings. He couldn't afford one yet, but the image stuck with him, fueling years of work and saving until he could join the ranks. For that young dreamer, the Panhead became a symbol of aspiration, proof that adulthood meant the freedom to chase the horizon. Decades later, when he finally restored one, the memory of those early rides remained intact. Reflection bridge. By the mid-1950s, the Panhead had transcended being just a product. It had become a cultural signal that announced who you were before you even spoke. And that aura would grow even stronger as new cultural forces picked it up and reshaped it into legend. Context digest. Hollywood played its role in embedding the Panhead into the American psyche. Films featuring leather-jacketed rebels and tough-living bikers often highlighted machines that looked suspiciously like Panheads, cementing the connection between this motorcycle and a rebellious edge. At the same time, motorcycle clubs, both casual and notorious, found in the Panhead a durable and stylish machine that could carry them for hundreds of miles. Whether celebrated or feared, these images reinforced the idea that the Panhead was not just transportation, but a lifestyle marker. Microstory. On a long desert road, a small club of friends takes their Panheads on a ride to nowhere in particular. The sun sets, painting the sky in orange and purple, while the chrome reflects every flicker of fading light. They don't need a destination. The ride itself is the purpose. In that moment, the Panhead serves as the perfect companion to youthful freedom, a reminder that sometimes the journey is more important than the arrival. As the 1950s rolled on, the Panhead cemented itself as both a technological achievement and a cultural beacon, embodying reliability, style, and rebellion all in one. But as the cultural wave intensified, new questions emerged about what the Panhead represented and how far its influence could stretch beyond engineering into the realms of identity, art, and myth. And that brings us to the next layer of the Panhead's evolving story, where custom culture, Hollywood, and outlaw imagery transformed it from a popular cruiser into an enduring American icon. As the Panhead rolled into the cultural spotlight of the late 1950s and early 1960s, it began to transcend its role as a factory-built motorcycle and instead became a blank canvas for expression. Riders were no longer satisfied with owning the stock machine. They wanted their Panheads to reflect individuality, rebellion, and artistry. This hunger for personalization created a culture of chopping, stretching, and reshaping that would eventually define one of the most creative eras in motorcycle history. The Panhead's sturdy frame and straightforward engineering made it the perfect candidate for modification. And custom builders began experimenting with ways to strip away weight, alter proportions, and make each bike stand out. What had begun as a motorcycle for the masses was quickly becoming the muse for an entire subculture of riders who rejected conformity. Microstory. In a small Los Angeles garage, a group of friends gather around a Panhead frame with cutting torches and hand tools. They remove the heavy fenders, cut down the seat, and extend the front fork. The result is crude by today's standards, but revolutionary for the time. a lighter, sleeker machine that reflects its builder's identity more than the company's blueprint. That early chopper would go on to inspire countless others, each iteration more daring than the last. Context Digest, the Panhead's design lent itself to this creative explosion. Its engine was reliable enough to survive heavy modifications, and its aesthetic foundation, big chrome surfaces, broad lines, and distinctive engine covers, remained recognizable even after extreme alterations. Builders could stretch a Panhead into something barely resembling its stock form, and yet the heart of the machine remained intact. This malleability made it a cornerstone of American motorcycle customization, laying the groundwork for decades of innovation. Microstory. Picture a rider pulling into a roadside diner in 1961 on a dramatically chopped Panhead. The bike sits lower, the paint is metallic and wild, the handlebars tall and defiant. Heads turn, conversations stop, and the machine does exactly what the rider hoped. It commands attention. That Panhead is no longer just transportation, it's theater on wheels, a rolling announcement that the rider belongs to a different world, one unafraid of breaking tradition. Reflection Bridge. The custom Panhead wasn't only about aesthetics, it was also a response to cultural forces that were reshaping America during the era of rock and roll, social upheaval, and shifting identities. Microstory. In New York City, an artist buys a used Panhead not because he needs to ride long distances, but because he sees it as a sculpture in motion. He paints it with abstract designs, photographs it in gritty alleyways, and eventually exhibits it in a gallery. Viewers argue whether it's art, rebellion, or both, but what's clear is that the Panhead has crossed a line. It's no longer only part of motorcycle culture, but part of cultural conversation itself. Context Digest. Hollywood amplified this evolution by immortalizing Panheads and their chopped offspring in films that blurred the lines between freedom and menace. As the machines gained screen time, they carried with them a mythology of rebellion, danger, and allure. These portrayals shaped public perception, sometimes unfairly, but they ensured that the Panhead would never fade into obscurity. Instead, the bike became synonymous with daring characters who lived outside the mainstream. Microstory. In the Midwest, a teenager sneaks into a late-night showing of a biker film. On the screen, a Panhead roars across desert highways, ridden by characters who seem to fear nothing. The teenager leaves the theater wide-eyed, determined that one day he'll own a bike just like it. For him, the movie wasn't just entertainment. It was a glimpse into another life, one that revolved around the raw freedom a Panhead could offer. Reflection Bridge. By now, the Panhead was firmly established as a cultural artifact, shaping not only how motorcycles were built and ridden, but also how they were perceived by the world at large. Context Digest. By the mid-1960s, the Panhead was nearing the end of its production run, soon to be replaced by the Shovelhead. Yet even as it bowed out, its impact had multiplied far beyond its years of manufacture. It had launched the chopper movement, fueled pop culture, and given rise to one of the most enduring aesthetics in motorcycling. Its legacy was no longer tied to what left the Harley-Davidson factory, but to what riders created in their garages and on the road. Microstory. A retired rider in the 1980s opens his garage to reveal the Panhead he bought decades earlier. The bike is scratched, its chrome dulled, but it carries the modifications of his youth. A custom paint job, a slightly altered frame, a seat worn from thousands of miles. He smiles at the memories embedded in the machine, not of racing or records, but of the life he lived with it. The Panhead tells his story in steel and scars. The cultural momentum sparked by the Panhead's adaptability and mythic presence ensured that it wouldn't simply fade into history once production stopped. Instead, it carried its aura forward, shaping future generations of riders, builders, and collectors. And in this final stretch, we'll explore how its legend continued to evolve long after the last Panhead left the factory, cementing its place as one of the most celebrated motorcycles in American history. Even after Harley-Davidson phased out the Panhead in the mid-1960s, its story didn't end. In many ways, it was just beginning. The bike quickly moved from being a contemporary machine to a revered classic, and its reputation only grew as collectors, restorers, and builders realized they were dealing with something timeless. Owning a Panhead became less about daily riding and more about preserving a piece of mid-century Americana. a relic that embodied both technical evolution and cultural transformation. Yet even in its retirement, the Panhead was not destined to sit silently in museums. It continued to roar, whether through meticulously restored originals or heavily customized builds that honored its spirit. Microstory. In the 1970s, a young mechanic discovers a neglected Panhead in a barn covered in dust and rust. To most, it looks like junk, but to him, it's an opportunity. Over months of careful work, he brings it back to life, polishing the chrome, restoring the engine, and hearing that familiar rumble for the first time in years. When he finally rides it down the street, neighbors stop to watch, and the bike once again commands attention. Context Digest. Restoration culture around the Panhead became a movement in itself. Clubs, magazines, and swap meets began trading not just parts but stories, creating a network of enthusiasts who believed keeping the Panhead alive was a way of keeping history alive. Collectors prized authenticity, while customizers valued creativity, but both agreed that the Panhead was worth preserving. Its rarity and cultural weight made it more than just another vintage motorcycle, it became an heirloom. Microstory. Picture a father and daughter working together in their garage decades later. The father rode a Panhead in his youth, and now, with his daughter's help, he restores another one. For her, it's a chance to connect with his past. For him, it's a way of passing on not only mechanical skills, but a legacy of freedom and individuality. When they finally fire it up, the shared smile says everything. The Panhead bridges generations. Reflection Bridge. The Panhead's ability to carry meaning across time is what cements it as more than a machine. It's a cultural anchor. Microstory. In the 1990s, a high-profile auction features a pristine Panhead that once belonged to a Hollywood actor. Bidders from around the world compete fiercely, driving the price to levels unthinkable in the bike's original era. The sale makes headlines, not because of the celebrity connection alone, but because it proves the Panhead's mystique is now global. It's no longer just a symbol of American freedom, it's a collectible artifact recognized across cultures. Context Digest. As the custom motorcycle scene matured, the Panhead continued to inspire builders. Modern choppers and bobbers often trace their DNA back to Panhead-era experiments, borrowing lines, proportions, and even outright engines from the original bikes. Custom shops kept the Panhead aesthetic alive, ensuring that new generations who had never seen one fresh from a factory still recognized its silhouette as the quintessential Harley form. Microstory. In a modern workshop, a young builder integrates vintage Panhead parts into a contemporary custom project. The result is a blend of old and new, a bike that carries the soul of the 1950s while riding with today's reliability. Visitors to the shop crowd around it, drawn not only to its beauty but to the way it channels history into the present. The Panhead becomes the star of the show once more, proving that old steel still has a heartbeat. Reflection Bridge. Through auctions, restorations, and modern builds, the Panhead secured its immortality, but its most enduring role may be symbolic, the shorthand for freedom on two wheels. Context Digest. Today, when people imagine a classic Harley, many instinctively picture the Panhead. It represents an era when motorcycles were not overly computerized or distant, but mechanical companions that demanded attention and rewarded care. This image, amplified through film, music, and popular imagination, ensures that even those who have never ridden one understand its significance. The Panhead remains shorthand for rebellion, style, and authenticity. Microstory. An elderly rider, now too old to ride, sits on his porch as a group of younger riders pass by on restored Panheads. The sound makes him smile, and for a moment, he's transported back to the open roads of his youth. The bikes aren't just machines to him. They're memories, friendships, and the essence of freedom itself. Watching them ride by, he feels reassured that the spirit of his generation lives on. The Panhead's journey from showroom floors of the 1950s to modern garages and collector circles illustrates a rare kind of permanence in a fast-moving world. Its engineering was strong, its cultural impact massive, and its adaptability unmatched, allowing it to evolve into legend. Even now, decades after its last production run, the Panhead still has the power to captivate, inspire, and unite riders across time. And so, as we bring our story full circle, we find that the Panhead's true gift lies not only in what it was, but in what it continues to mean. Proof that some machines never fade, they only grow stronger with age. The Harley-Davidson Panhead of the 1950s may have started life as a technical upgrade in Harley's long line of engines, but over the decades it became something far greater. It was a reflection of its time, a machine that captured post-war optimism, cultural rebellion, and the urge to make a personal mark on the world. What makes the Panhead remarkable is not simply the way it ran, but the way it wove itself into American identity, shaping not only motorcycle culture, but also popular imagination. Riders from small towns to big cities saw themselves in it, whether through its chrome shine, its adaptability for custom builds, or its starring role in movies and magazines that defined generations. Its journey from showroom centerpiece to custom garage muse to collector's crown jewel is proof of its unusual ability to endure. Today, restorers treat Panheads like sacred artifacts, while custom builders treat them as endless inspiration. Families hand them down across generations, and auction houses celebrate them as cultural icons. Yet at the heart of all this attention lies something simple. The Panhead still turns heads because it carries the spirit of freedom and individuality that never goes out of style. It is both a snapshot of the 1950s and a living legend that continues to roll on highways, city streets, and show floors around the world. So as we close our ride through the story of the Panhead, remember that its legacy isn't locked in the past. Every time a Panhead fires up, whether in the hands of a collector, a young rider discovering history, or a family restoring a bike together, it breathes life into an enduring narrative of freedom, ingenuity, and style. Thanks for riding with us on Overdrive Insider. See you next time, automotive enthusiasts.